Shivering Alex, known to the wider world as Never Lose 85, woke up. He was numb and could not feel his body. For a moment he panicked. What was going on? Why is it so cold? He tried and failed to look around. There was only blackness and cold. A tiny light in the far distance started to approach him. Again, he tried to recollect himself. The last thing he remembered was playing a game of Supreme Commander for hours and hours. Did he die? Went too far playing that game? Alex smiled internally at the irony of it. Since he created his new avatar, he never lost. And now he might have brought himself low. A heroic gamer's death, he thought. Meanwhile, the light kept coming closer and closer, burning his eyes that were now accustomed to the total darkness. He tried to blink, but he did not seem to have any control of his body. Nor did he feel anything. He could only look at the brightening light. Was it the light at the end of the tunnel some people talk about? He wondered. Then he heard a robotic voice. Welcome to scenario number 1. Prove your mettle or be returned. Alex did not know what this was about, but he knew he was going to prove his mettle. He was Never Lose 85. Suddenly the light expanded and changed in many colors. It hurt and he lost vision for a moment. Then he saw 5 giant robotic figures, each slightly different from the others. Choose, said the robotic voice. He tried to focus on one of the figures and they started to move rapidly, one by one coming into focus with a blurring amount of information moving too fast to comprehend. Whoa, Alex thought. Take it easy. At least he seemed to have a good rig. Fast and responsive. The basis for victory. He now tried more deliberately to focus on one of the figures and started to look at their capabilities. A builder. A solid choice when you know what you are up against. Alex decided he did not know. Next, a jack of all trades. Not too bad. But it would not give him an edge. Next, 2 more he could not use now. A heavily armored frontline robot and a robot focused on supporting other units. He would keep them in mind. His opponent might have other options. The last option was a recon robot. Not that strong but very fast. Not an option for a beginner. He immediately made his choice. This one. Recon Commander selected, the robotic voice replied. Select low doubt. Alex let out a long sigh. Well, at least he had a body to control again. But he hated games with a lot of preparation. Often he would just mash the random button when he had to decide on an appearance. But this was different. He could choose his weapon. After briefly considering his options, he chose the riot gun. This would prevent the enemy from rushing him. He was a commander after all. The real battle would have to be done with other units. Or so he assumed. A timer started to count down. This was so unfair. He was not yet familiar with the choices. The next choice was for the advanced systems. Armor, shield, and stealth were available. In Alex's eyes, there was only one option. Stealth was the one that fitted best with his choice of commander. Phew, Alex thought, looking around what he assumed was the battlefield. The minimap showed no details. Still 10 seconds on the clock. As he expected, he had many building options. He would start with some economy. A mining unit. Where to place? He could place it everywhere. The whole map was mineable? Must be a beginner scenario, Alex thought to himself. He queued a bunch of mines and power generators and proceeded to choose a factory. Oh boy, a lot of options. And the first factory was free. Only after placing one does he see the cost of a factory. Those were not cheap. Quickly he deleted the queued buildings, put a factory, and wreaked the economic buildings. 2 seconds left. The cold was biting, even through his commander's interface. The digital readouts confirmed his suspicion. Near absolute zero. Perfect for a beginner scenario designed to teach resource management in harsh conditions. Alex's recon commander darted across the barren landscape, setting up the initial economy. The entire map was mineable, which meant rapid expansion was crucial. Then he started producing basic units, all while keeping an eye on the minimap for any signs of the enemy. The enemy's base came into view. It was heavily fortified with advanced weaponry, indicating they were focused on high-tech solutions. Alex smirked. He knew they would be vulnerable to a different kind of threat. As expected, the enemy focused on building advanced weaponry and shelling his visible base. Their progress indicated an experience with the setting he still had to match. He quickly made a mental note of the resource allocation and layouts. That was for later. He could no longer win this way. Alex knew he needed to think outside the box. He utilized his stealth capabilities to move behind enemy lines. Setting up a new base was crucial. With the enemy preoccupied with obliterating his original base, they were oblivious to the hidden threat. Alex's new base began producing units rapidly. He leveraged his stealth abilities to keep his new construction hidden from enemy radar. His strategy was simple but effective. Overwhelm the enemy from within. The enemy's nuclear missiles rained down, decimating his original base in a spectacular display of firepower. Alex watched with a mix of satisfaction and apprehension. The enemy was distracted, searching for the last remnants of his original base. Alex's new base, nestled behind enemy lines, began cranking out cheap, disposable units. He carefully hid his base with counter-radar units. The cheap units were perfect for his plan. They didn't need to travel far to be effective, and the enemy would have no time to intercept them. He sent these units in unending, relentless waves toward the enemy's factories. The enemy, still focused on finding and destroying his original base, didn't notice the new threat until it was too late. The enemy's advanced defenses were ineffective at repelling units that appeared right next to their production facilities. The enemy's confusion and frustration mounted. They frantically tried to deploy countermeasures, but Alex's stealth units had already done their damage. The enemy's factories were swarmed, their production halted, and their high-tech weapons became useless in the face of the overwhelming numbers of cheap units. Alex watched as the enemy's once formidable base fell into chaos. The satisfaction of outmaneuvering a more experienced opponent was what he lived for. Or had lived for. It did not matter. He was never lose 85. As the dust settled, Alex's units emerged victorious. His clever use of stealth had turned the tables. He reflected on the battle, understanding how his approach, despite being a beginner's choice, had outsmarted a more experienced enemy. Most likely because he was underestimated. Now that was a beginner's fault. Alex's new base was secure, and he had successfully executed a strategy that played to his strengths. The victory was sweet not just because of the win, but because it proved that even when he did not know the rules, he still could beat the odds with clever tactics and a little creativity.